Well, it's been a long time since I posted anything. Um, been wondering for quite a while if I should post anything more and what I should talk about. And recently, I've been rewatching Ted Lasso for like the 9 millionth time. I think it's freaking brilliant television. It's brilliant messaging. It's brilliant acting, writing, directing, all that. The the thing that stood out to me, or the thing that caught my attention this time around, was there's that moment in the show where he starts to have panic attacks, and they do a phenomenal job of portraying that. Every panic attack, for everyone that has them, is a completely different experience. But I think they did a very good job, and Jason Sudeikis does a phenomenal job of portraying aspects of that experience. And it made me think that's the thing I need to talk about. Because when I found out that my ex-wife, was having an affair, was cheating on me with a guy that I thought was a friend, I made it a couple of days. Like, sort of staggered around, unsure of my footing in the world and not knowing what the hell was going on. And then there was a kind of defining moment, which, when I got home from that event, I had a full on, complete, total breakdown, full on panic attack. I couldn't function. And if you've never had one, I know that if you've never had a panic attack, this is probably going to sound wildly self-indulgent, wildly childish, infantile, and you may even say pathetic. All I can share with you is what I went through, and I consider myself a fairly to have some pretty fairly resolute individual, a person with some resilience. And yet this was, this life that I'd spent 20 years building was now, the rug had been pulled out from under me. There was no footing under my feet. Everything I thought was a foundational truth in my life was now destroyed. And yeah, I had a full-on panic attack. I was incapable of just about anything. I lay on the couch or in the bed and literally curled up in the fetal position with thoughts just ripping through my brain at freight train speed. And I was unable to control them. I was unable to catch my breath. I was unable to think clearly for about 36 hours. And I know this will sound completely strange, maybe, but my now ex-wife, my wife at the time who was having the affair, basically took care of me for 36 hours. Excuse me. She, made me food and made sure that I was okay. At one point in the beginning of it, she even said to me, she was like, you have got to come. Like, I was babbling incoherently and psychotically, just babbling, like just words and thoughts and emotions pouring out of me. And at one point she was like, if you cannot calm down somewhat, I have to take you to the ER. Like, I have to get you medicated or something. Like, you're scaring the crap out of me. And if you can't stop this, I have to do something. And I was able to, I didn't want to go down that road. So I was able to control myself enough to at least, not panic my now ex-wife. And I mean, in her approach, it wasn't aggressive. She was scared, and she was scared for me. So I cannot describe it any better than that. Than the thoughts, the wild freight train speed pinballs of thoughts bouncing around in my head was just uncontrollable. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't control my thoughts, which for me was a thing I had experienced once before in my life. But I was destroyed for 36 hours. Eventually, the panic eased. I wouldn't say that it stopped. I would say it downgraded from full panic attack to just panic, to just horror and shame and terror and fear and sorrow and grief and anger. And, that was the more downgraded version of it. And I'd only experienced that once before in my life. One time, senior year in high school, very competitive school, very competitive program, and I had one last exam to pass. And if I didn't pass the exam, I wasn't going to graduate and I wasn't going to go to college that I'd already been accepted into. I had a panic attack in the middle of that exam. Nowhere near to the same extent, just like feeling like I was going to throw up, flop sweat, the whole, that level of panic attack. And I'm sure I failed that exam, by the way. Miss Parker, you did me a solid. I think she passed me just because she could see what was happening. Anyway, all that to say, I'm not exactly prone to panic attacks, flights of fancy, uncontrolled thoughts, all that kind of thing. This was a 10x of that, 100x of that. I was in a ball on the couch or in the bed, unable to do anything. And then recently, my oldest, who is going to be a junior in high school next year, we had just attended some of our younger kids' graduation ceremonies from elementary school and middle school. And I think kind of the emotional impact of all that, and the sort of emotional impact for my oldest of thinking that 2 years from now, she is going to be graduating from high school. And oh my God, am I prepared for that? Will my parents be proud of me? Am I doing enough? She has a great sense of responsibility and is a very good kid, and it just kind of overwhelmed her, and she literally just burst into tears. And, nothing of the sort of debilitating level of panic attack, but, on that spectrum. And we talked, and I sat with her, and she cried, and we got through it, and then, then came back together. So for those of you that might be going through a divorce, maybe have just been through a divorce, maybe you just discovered that your significant other, your spouse, was cheating on you, who knows? If you are in that, somewhere in that ballpark, and you've had a panic attack and you didn't know what the hell was happening, or you have had a panic attack and you are embarrassed by it, mortified by it, horrified by it, terrified by it, it is a not uncommon part of the divorce process. And maybe even you were the one that cheated on your spouse, and you're questioning if what you're doing is the right thing to do, or you're torn by guilt, or whatever it is. Maybe you have panic attacks. I would suggest a couple of things. One, understand that is not uncommon. If you're going through that, or you may be going through one right now, maybe you've been through that, and you think, oh dear God, what the hell is wrong with me? Well, nothing is more wrong with you than is wrong with anyone else. It is a not uncommon thing to have happen in a situation where your whole world has been flipped upside down. So first of all, give yourself a little grace, and think of it this way. If a friend came to you when you're in a good place, if a friend came to you and they were the one in a bad place, and they described this sense of panic and uncontrollable thoughts, and they can't breathe, and they're terrified and horrified and mortified by what happened, what would you say to them? You'd be like, ho, hang on, calm down. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You are okay. You're going to be okay. You would try to reassure them that what they've experienced is not weird or strange or stupid or pathetic or whatever emotional response they have, negative emotional response they have about the panic attack. Do that. Offer yourself that same grace. Offer yourself a measure of kindness, just like you would to someone that you truly care about. I've seen other folks not go through a panic attack, but right up against the edge of it. Similar situation. A friend of mine was getting divorced. Is in the divorce process. His wife, who was crazy, was fighting for full custody of their children, and she had moved away. So if he lost custody, or he had already lost custody of his children, and they were not going to be with him anymore, and he broke down, and he had to leave the situation we were in. Probably not a full panic attack, but bumping up against one. And we haven't talked about it much since. Maybe I will later. But I just want to share with you guys, if you're going through a divorce, and I say divorce because this is kind of primarily who I'm talking to, or people going through that horrible experience. But if you're going through some great tragedy, some great world-changing experience that yanks the rug out from under you, kicks you in the face, metaphorically, and you experience a panic attack, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're temporarily busted. At least I was. I stripped my gears there for just a brief period of time. But it is not uncommon, and it's not something to be ashamed of, in fact. I do suggest find someone to talk to about it. I mean, certainly if you have really good friends who you confide in, share with them. If you have access to a therapist and you can afford a therapist, unload that with your therapist, because they will tell you what you went through is normal. So hang in there. You're going to get through this. You're racked with grief and guilt and sorrow and anger and fury and disbelief. And it's understandable that you strip your gears for a little while. Go through that experience. When you are able to, be there for yourself, be there for your children. Give yourself some grace and talk about it with folks, especially if you can with a therapist, and especially with someone who truly cares for you. So hang in there. Best of luck to you all. You're going to get through it. Talk soon.